Hey everyone, I'm Tony George from DocSports.com, talking about the 2021 college football bowl betting season and just a kind of a sports betting 101 primer as we head into the bowl season. I taped this on November 30th, so the bowl matchups aren't really out yet with the conference championships games going this week, but it'll line out here in the next 7 days and you'll know what's going on and lines will be out, and there's going to be over 40 games this year in college football. I enter my 30th year in the business, and there's some tried and true things that have worked over the years. And as the sport has evolved and more teams enter the bowl games, and with lower records and more non-power 5 conference schools in the bowl games, it becomes it's a little different animal than it was 30 years ago in 1991 when I was doing this, when I first started. So thought I'd give you some tips. There's a lot of information over at DocSports.com. This isn't a sales pitch. There's a lot of information over there for free about betting bowls, bowl games, bowl tips, bowl free plays, both written and videos that you're going to see along the way. All that information will help you make better decisions when it comes to betting the bowl games. And even though there's 40 games, I will tell you the old adage I use, and it's non-hyped up and not flashy, but the bottom line is less is more. Especially in the bowl games when it comes to unit wagering. Now, standard plays like a 4-unit play, all the way up to 8 units for like a game of the year, and 6 and 7 units for top places, kind of the grading system and the unit rating system at DocSports.com. I do more than my fair share of bowls, not all of them, because some of them, quite frankly, have no value. Even though college football is ending, you want to get all these bets in because you're not going to see any college football again until next August and this, that, and the other. At the end of the day, we're here to do one thing, and that's make money betting bowl games. And even with increased volume because of increased games, I decrease the units. I do a lot of 2 and 3 unit bowl picks. And so you lower the money in which you wager on them. And you can increase your volume a little bit. So you spread around your liability a little bit more with not as much out there. So that being said, just a small from a wagering standpoint. Also, with the new age technology, we have in-game wagering. And some of these bowl games that you can't figure out where a team's going to be at for whatever reasons there is, whatever narrative there is on the team coach might be leaving, this, that, or the other. It's a lot better maybe to watch the first half. And if you've studied these teams and know their tendencies, maybe find an opportunity with the second half line. Just something for you to consider if you're in an area that's legal with an app. Like I live in Las Vegas, so you can bet on anything that moves out here, and it's all legal. But at the end of the day, that's something you might want to consider as well. Either side or total. Say you had a total, in a game that was like 66, and the halftime score is 7-10. Are they going to score more in the second half once they get their feet underneath them because they've had a long break or something? And the total's within, reasonable 28-30, you might want to say they're going to explode and get going in the second half. Based on what you've seen, you have to, these things don't stick until you see what happens up front. But just a few things here. Obviously, there's been a lot of coaching changes this year. Mid-season, at the end of the season, a couple of real shockers with Riley leaving Oklahoma, Kelly leaving Notre Dame. Where does that leave them in the bowl picture, and who's going to coach them, and this, that, and how does that affect kids? Many times these changes occur, and so you need to be careful with those teams. And some of the old school techniques still work. What's a team's motivation? How excited are they to be there? That stays true to this day. You have a Power 5 team that missed out on the conference championship game by 1 game, and it just happened, and they're dejected, so on and so forth. Wisconsin comes to mind this year. getting beat by Minnesota. They had a shot at getting in a Big Ten title game, and now they're going to go play who? Maybe they're going to play Memphis or one of these lesser-known schools, and they're going to be laying a huge number. Bear in mind that more and more non-Power 5 conference schools are now involved in bowl games, and they get to go play the Wisconsins of the world. Big name schools. That's their Super Bowl. You start giving them 15, 20, 24 points, and your motivation is lacking and their motivation is high. That's their Super Bowl. They want to beat big David versus Goliath type scenarios. So bear that in mind. And bear in mind also, you see a team, let's talk about, a lot of people will look at regular season against the spread win percentages. Meaning, say a team was 75% against the spread in the regular season, and they're playing a team that barely got in, and they were 44% against the spread. Well, bear in mind something. Over the last 15 years, when teams that entered a bowl game with a 75% against the spread record or better played in a bowl game, the last 15 years, they covered 45% of the time. So you can't rely on that stat. Bowl games are a completely different animal, because bear in mind, these teams that are playing in bowl games have been playing in conference. Teams they're familiar with. They play every year. The home road dichotomies, the personnel, the coaching tendencies, all these things they're familiar with, that they get to go in the film room and watch, and they kind of know what to expect. Now they're playing teams not in their conference that are a completely different geographic location, a completely different conference that does things differently. Like, the Big Ten is different than the Big 12. Big 12's a lot of run and shoot and spreads, and where the Big Ten's more traditional with their offenses for the most part for a lot of them. So you're playing teams that have a different scheme that you're not used to playing. And the defenses seem to always have a little bit of an advantage early. I especially like totals early in the bowl season being, you want to take a look at unders. A lot of the times, take a look at some of those numbers. You're not going to expect to see a team that's averaging 38 a game, playing a team from another conference that's allowing 21 a game, and the total 60-some. They may not meet their average. Most of the time when David does beat Goliath, they do it with defense. Just FYI. So the motivation, though, is a big deal. A lot of teams are dejected that they didn't get to where they wanted to be, and other teams up there, that's cool. That's a very scenario that you want to investigate. And you can follow beat sports writers on Twitter, on their blogs for various teams. You can find them. I've spent numerous weeks and hours finding every sports writer for Ball State, for, Samford, all these different schools. I like to follow them and see what they have to say about how practice is going, comments out of practice, this, that, and the other, travel issues, all these different things they talk about. Gives you a little insight into what's going on with that program when they're matching up against another one. That might be something you want to take a look at, especially if a game you're interested in. You have to research every team in Division I football, but for a bowl game, you might want to find out Western Michigan's beat sports writer's name and follow him on Twitter and his blog and this, that, and the other, because that's what I do. So that being said, I guess one other thing that I would say is one thing I look for is a lot of teams started out poorly during the year, and they won their last 3 or 4 games, not to win their conference, but they won their last 3 or 4 games in a row, both straight up and against the spread, to get bowl eligibility. Maybe one game over, say just 7 wins versus 6 or whatever, going up against a team that fell by the wayside in the ACC, say North Carolina or something, that just kind of dropped towards the end of the season. And they're going to end up in a bowl game against a team that really was coming on in the regular season at the end of the season with a lot of motivation. Those are teams catching big points you want to keep your eye on. These are just a few tips. There's a bunch more over at DocSports.com. Good luck in your 2021 bowl season. I'll be locked, loaded, and ready. Put 30 years of experience to work for you, and put some of these tips and techniques to work for you as well, and you'll have a successful bowl season. Best of luck.